Welcome back, everyone. Craig here. So, just me, no Jonah. Going to try and resume some live streams. I think I should be able on most Wednesdays be able to do a live stream for about 30 minutes or so, starting around 10 after 5, and I can usually go for 30 to maybe 40 minutes or so. So, if anyone is interested in the live streams. It should become kind of a regular thing, in part because for a while, for the longest time, we did 2 episodes a week. Sundays and Wednesdays at 5 o'clock p.m. is when we release those. We still release the episode on Sunday evenings at 5 p.m., but have not been releasing the Wednesday episodes for a variety of reasons. Mostly just Jonah and I have just had a difficult time finding enough time to record and edit and get up 2 episodes. Plus, we've been pretty busy, like with the Discord community, a lot of stuff going on there. And then I have my other channel that I've been doing some things with. So, for the time being, I think we're going to continue to do just the 1 episode a week. And then, if possible, I'd like to do a live stream so people can interact in real time if they want. So I'm going to let people filter in. If people filter in, I don't know, maybe no one will show up today, but I did want to talk. I have a couple things I want to talk about. I'm searching Humanae Vitae right now for something I wanted to talk about. You should be able to tell from the title that the whole, I don't know, good cause, grave reason. I'm not even sure what the actual language is for using NFP. That's what I'm searching for right now in Humanae Vitae. So I'm going to look for that while people show up if they want. Let's see here. Natural. I'm looking for the term. I always thought it was grave reason, but someone corrected me. I think it was a priest corrected me the other day that that's actually not the standard. So if anyone knows what the actual term is, and it's probably in the catechism too, I could look for that. But what is the term that the church uses when it says, if couples have a serious reason or whatever, they can use natural family planning? If people have that, maybe throw it in the comment. But what has been so fascinating to me is I've been, podcasting about this stuff for close to 2 years now, and getting to know a lot of people when it comes to this stuff. Is when I started out, I guess I more or less assumed that everyone thought that NFP was okay. um, I knew there was people that didn't use NFP, and I knew most people, Catholics included, don't use NFP at all, are using contraception. But I assumed that most Catholics that did not use contraception were using natural family planning or nothing at all. What I didn't realize until I got into the Catholic internet space is how many people are not only morally opposed to birth control, which is, I don't know, that's kind of obvious from church teaching anyway, but how many are opposed to natural family planning and saying, "Ooh, don't use it at all," or "Be very careful about using it." And that has never made a lot of sense to me, and it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me why people are uh, so opposed to natural family planning. I remember when we got married, and we were planning to use natural family planning right away, so we had to learn it. I remember being told, learn NFP before you get married, because it's a lot easier to learn natural family planning before you get married than while you're married. And I remember being surprised when I would meet people that were getting married who weren't going to They didn't plan to wait to have kids, so they didn't see any reason to learn natural family planning, take classes before they got married. I thought that was crazy. Now I'm starting to realize that people are afraid of the knowledge. That's something that seems to be becoming more and more common within traditionalist circles, for people to be very, very afraid of knowledge of basic biology, and somehow are afraid that that having that knowledge could lead them to sin and become selfish. And I'm still amazed every time I run across people that have that mindset. So anyway, but I did know. I mean, I did know that more or less the church said you shouldn't be using NFP, uh, just as a replacement for birth control. Okay, and I that much I knew before we got married, but of course, at that time, I didn't realize how damn difficult NFP was and how horrible it was to use it. And so now that I now that we've been using it for 20 plus years, I'm very, very skeptical of the idea that anyone can actually use it in an abusive manner for any extended period of time, because it's no fun. It really kind of sucks. And most people, I think, are not going to use it for an extended period of time unless they have a really good reason to do so. But the, so what does it mean to have good cause to use NFP? I actually think that is sort of intuitive to people. Uh, I think it's sort of easy to conceptualize. Hi, Midnight. Good to see you. I think it's sort of easy to conceptualize when it's okay to use NFP, even though not everyone agrees on the standard. There are people that say, well, you need a really serious reason. Others say, well, if you just feel like you're overwhelmed and can't have more children, that's good enough reason. I probably fall more into that camp. I'm very much a fan of responsible parenting, even though I wouldn't say we've been very responsible from a standpoint of procreation. We have 9 kids, but I think that makes sense, and I think that's entirely consistent with church teaching. But what does it mean if you don't have good cause? Like, what is that? No one's really been able to tell me what it looks like if you don't have good cause. Um, and a priest friend of the show is he basically said, well, then you have normal intercourse, and I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, what is normal intercourse? And for someone that is married and has kids, and this is where I suspect the fear of NFP and the fear of the knowledge, it tends to seep into traditionalists and make people scrupulous and afraid of even learning NFP in the first place, because it's sort of like, once you have that knowledge, you can't unlearn that. Once you understand how a woman's natural cycle works, even if you're not using natural family planning in a very methodical way, you generally know the times of the month when pregnancy is possible. You can kind of tell when ovulation occurs, and once ovulation occurs, the chances of pregnancy go way down. So even if you're not charting in a very methodical way, you can get a good sense. I mean, that was the old calendar method, right? That was before we had natural family planning. We had the calendar method, which I'm guessing was avoid days 7 through 15 of the cycle. Now, it wasn't very effective because that doesn't always work, but that was sort of the idea. They avoided that chunk of the cycle when a woman is fertile and conception is most likely. So, but here's kind of my point. What I think, it seems to me that this whole idea that you have to have good cause to use natural family planning seems to be relying on kind of antiquated ideas of how fertility and conception actually works. I believe if you study Aquinas in the scholastics long enough, you'll see that they really kind of saw sex and procreation as sort of a cause and effect relationship. Like it just, you know, that the conjugal act happens, procreation happens. When in fact much it's much more variable than that. It depends on a lot of circumstances. There's actually a short period in the month when a woman is actually fertile. She's not fertile, obviously, the entire. I think she's fertile for like a 12 to 14. I'm sorry, 12 to 24-hour period is when the egg is actually released. The reason the fertility window is longer than that is because sperm can live inside of a woman's body for like up to 5 days beforehand. But the actual time that a woman is fertile is very small. The trick is to figure out when that happens, right, and to predict it if you can. But I feel like this notion, the sort of the traditional ideas of procreation and what isn't acceptable seems to rely on a very much more old-fashioned cause and effect understanding of sex and procreation, when that's not really how it works, which is why some couples have difficult times getting pregnant when they want to. But so what do I mean? So okay, I'm rambling on here, but let me kind of put it in more practical terms. So my wife and I are using the Marquette method, and we're using it to the T. We're not taking. My wife's not taking chances, and I'm not pushing her to take chances. So that means we are abstaining well prior to when ovulation is expected to happen, and we are abstaining for a long period afterwards, even though we are very confident when ovulation occurs and the egg dies within a day. The Marquette method basically puts the ovulation day plus 4 more days is off limits. So 5 total days seems overkill to me, but I'm not the one that has to get pregnant, so I get it. But, so for us to be super, super confident in the method, you are very, you're being very conservative, right? Even though if we just took off ovulation in 3 days, so 4 days, I bet our chances of getting pregnant on the day 5, the last day of the abstinence period, I'll bet is less than 5%, maybe less than 2%. Like it's very, very small. It's not non-existent, but it's very, very small, right? And also that the chances of getting pregnant the day earlier are also pretty small. Like your chances of getting pregnant after ovulation are very, very small. I think the chance of pregnancy comes in because possibly you misjudge or misunderstood when ovulation occurs. So as you get closer to ovulation and further from ovulation, it's not like you're either fertile or not. Your chances of conception just change, like the probability changes. So I wanted to test out this theory, and so I'm going to show you, if I can, something I did on ChatGPT. Let's see here. I think you should be able to see this. I'm going to, let me see if I can make it bigger. View. Let's see here. Too big. That's a little better. Okay. So this came from ChatGPT. I'm not sure this is exactly right, but I'll bet it's ballpark. So so what's the fertile window? So the fertile window spans 5 days before ovulation and the day of ovulation, and that's because sperm can live in the female. That's what the cervical mucus for, is to give a home for the sperm to live for up to 5 days, and then an egg is viable for about 24 hours after ovulation, right? So I asked ChatGPT, what's the probability of conception based on the proximity to ovulation. And this is what it said. So it says the probability of conception. Let me see. My mouse is not working here. There we go. This is where I should have Kevin Non-Tradicath on here. He'd probably be able to correct these for me. So if a couple engages 5 days before ovulation, it says that the probability of conception is about 5%. That's pretty small. And then, every day you get closer to ovulation, that the probability goes up, doubles actually from day 5 to 4. So 4 days before ovulation, you have a 10%, which is anything but a causal relationship, right? It is a possibility, not even a probability. It actually never becomes a probability to the extent that it's never more than 50% likely that you're going to get pregnant, unless, let's say, you're doing it multiple times during the fertile phase. I don't know how that works during the fertile window. But 3 days before ovulation, your chances of, and I'm guessing this is based on a reasonably fertile couple where both the husband and the wife are reasonably fertile. 3 days before ovulation, the probability of conception is 15%. 2 days is 25%. Interestingly, 1 day before ovulation has the highest, even higher than the day of ovulation, of 30 to 35% probability. And I'm guessing that's what that means. That means the sperm is there the entire time that the egg is out and available, right? So if you ovulate on a particular day, depending on when the couple engages, the sperm may not be there for the entirety of the time that the egg is available, but it's pretty high either way. 20 to 30% is considered the probability of conception on the day of ovulation. But what's really interesting and fascinating is 1 day after ovulation, it drops to 0 to 5%, right? So, which is why I question the Marquette making us take 5 full days off, which includes ovulation. I mean, the test seems pretty reliable, but be that as it may, the difficulty with NFP is you never really know, no matter how predictable a woman is, you never really know exactly when ovulation is going to occur. And it really is that long lifespan that sperm has prior to ovulation when pregnancy can happen. But once you get through ovulation, if you can confirm when ovulation occurs, you have a much less chance of getting pregnant, right? Well, what's the point of all this? Well, what is normal intercourse, to use the term that was given earlier? What does normal look like from the standpoint of a couple, let's say, that does not have just cause, doesn't have a good reason to use NFP or whatever? Well, for us, we're using the Marquette method. So what if we disregarded the rules and said, you know what, we're going to we'll take off, at least 5 days before ovulation, and then we're going to take 2 days off afterwards, right? That is technically not following the rules. We are not following natural family planning, but our chances of getting pregnant are very, very small, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, Midnight asks, what's the best way to ethically increase sperm's mortality rate? Well, I think we got to do something about the cervical mucus. That's the without good cervical mucus, the sperm doesn't last very long. So I think the question is, how do we ethically make the cervical mucus less hospitable to the sperm? But I don't know that there are any ways, but I'm open to suggestions, and I'm obviously interested in learning to what extent they're compatible with church teaching. But so kind of getting back to what I was saying is, let's say that we as a couple objectively don't have good cause to use NFP and avoid pregnancy. Now, full disclosure, we are trying not to get pregnant now. We have 9. We're getting old. I feel very comfortable in that decision, but we're not going to be bankrupt if we do, and there's no obvious medical reason not to get um, pregnant other than we're just getting old, and my wife's at an age that just the chances of a the last couple of pregnancies have been difficult, and the chances of something really bad happening go up when you get to be our age. But I know some will argue, well, that's not a good enough reason. So let's say for purposes of this discussion that we don't have good cause. Well, what does that mean for us? Are we covered if we kind of follow Marquette, but let's say we shorten the window a little bit. So instead of 14 to 16 days, which is our norm, we take 10 days off in the middle. We're not following the rules, but our chances of getting pregnant are statistically going to be pretty low, especially to the extent that we trim days off after ovulation. What is it? So what does that mean? Are we using too much? Um, on the other hand, like if you want to, take it to the opposite extreme, does that mean if we don't have good cause, we must always engage on the ovulation day? Like she takes her test in the morning, says peak today. Are we morally obligated to make it happen that day if we don't have just cause to avoid a pregnancy? I mean, I think these may sound kind of ridiculous, and they kind of are, but I think they're fair questions because I don't think there's ever really been a good explanation offered as to what it actually looks like if you don't have a good cause. And what does that mean? Well, and this is just my own personal opinion. Do not take theological advice from me or for us here, but I'm very skeptical of the idea that anyone could actually sinfully use NFP, right? Um, Maybe you could get to a point where you become selfish in this and that, but I think it's really hard to articulate how a couple who isn't using birth control is not morally obligated to engage in the conjugal act a certain number of times. Uh, there's nothing that says you must engage within a day of the ovulation every month, or you're not being open to life, because you're never eliminating the chance of conception. You're only increasing or decreasing the probability, and so that is where I think I just to me it's sort of nonsensical, and it frustrates me to see energy poured into making people feel guilty about using NFP. I think a lot of couples, ourselves probably included, when we were younger, probably erred on the side of having children and taking the chance of getting pregnant because we weren't sure we had a really good reason not to get pregnant, even when you have 4 kids under the age of 6 or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of couples feel guilted into having kids more frequently or whatever than they might otherwise choose for themselves. And I think that's a problem. I think that's something that needs to be addressed, and more clarity ought to be offered. Now, I will say this, in talking to priests about this, especially parish priests, I think a lot of parish priests really don't understand how all of this works, both from the standpoint of how NFP works, how the fertile window works, and really kind of how the day-to-day life of a couple works. Uh, Life is difficult, especially you have more than a couple of kids, or you have any kids that are young. It's not like, you could part the Red Sea on day one of the infertile window and you just, make it happen. Like, you may have all the desire in the world to do it, and in the kids or life, or you may have a sick child or in-laws in the house, whatever. it just doesn't work that way. In couples that are using NFP are really undertaking a lot, and I think it's unfortunate that a lot of couples are adding to that weight by having this moral guilt or uncertainty about using NFP. So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I think it is really important for us to understand what is actually being taught, and how does it work in practice, because I don't think anyone really has a clear answer for what it's actually supposed to look like in practice. So anyway, I'm gonna take this down here. Uh, Again, my mouse is giving me trouble here. There we go. Now you can back to seeing my ugly face. I'm blurring in and out of the background because I had to get rid of the green screen behind me because of the other video work that I do here from the same spot. So, which is fine. That's why I look like I'm fading in and out like Back to the Future. But anyway, that's kind of all I had. I haven't seen too many questions or comments. But this is something that I don't think this is just an esoteric issue. I think this is something that affects couples. I mean, even ourselves, like my wife and I, even though we feel very secure in our decision to really use NFP now, not to get pregnant, my wife still, I'd say, asks herself every single month, are we just being selfish? And she says this as the mother of 9 who's been changing diapers and nursing babies literally nonstop for over 20 years, is concerned. And I think that's kind of crazy, but that's what we're left with, because there just isn't, I think, enough clarity on what this actually looks like. And I think the lack of clarity is probably just a lack of understanding, which is why we do this podcast, why I talk about these things, to kind of fill in the gaps, fill in the knowledge gaps, because I think my experience has been that a lot of priests genuinely don't know and want to know, and I want to do my part to help educate. So, okay, well, that actually went by pretty quick. I won't ramble on anymore unless anyone has any questions or thought-provoking um, thoughts. I don't know, Midnight, if there's a particular lifestyle, dietary habits, sleep patterns, whatever, that can affect the vitality of sperm or the hospitability of the cervical mucus. Uh, this would all be a lot easier if nature didn't have a way of taking care of these things for 5 days in advance of a moving target of ovulation. That's why even though the fertile window is, let's say, technically only 5 days, and it for NFP purposes, it's a lot longer than that, because we don't actually know when ovulation happens. And even when we're pretty confident we know ovulation has happened, sometimes there's a misreading. And so you build in a lot of protection on both sides to avoid unexpected surprises. So that's why, even with the advances in technology, the abstinence windows are pretty long and pretty arduous. At least they are from my perspective. Maybe my wife disagrees, but yeah. So anyway, that's all I had today. I hope you enjoy the live streams. I'll keep doing it if people find them useful and want to interact. I should be able to be here most Wednesdays around 5 o'clock ish. I have another one that goes from 4:30 to 5, and so I take 10 minutes to wet my whistle and use the boys' room, and then I happy to hop on here for 30 minutes or so. If you just can't get enough of this stuff, I will probably be live streaming from the other channel on Thursdays around the same time. I'll be doing a little more juicy deep dive, so you can check me out over there. Tomorrow, I'm planning to talk about the porn issue and how it seems to get approached in Catholic circles, and why I think our approach to it may be contributing to the problem. At least that's my theory. You'll have to test me on it tomorrow. But anyway, otherwise, I appreciate everyone who supports the channel, follows and subscribes, and shares our videos. If you aren't in our Discord community, but you would be interested in that, send us an email. Just email unchartedcatholicman@gmail.com is the easiest way. So the Discord, for those who don't know, is sort of like I say it's a kind of a combination of Facebook and Reddit. It's sort of a chat community. You can have a completely anonymous name. I encourage people not to use your real name, an avatar, and then we really deep dive, discuss some of these things, some of the stuff that's maybe a little too obscene for this channel. We talk about all of that on the Discord community. So if that's something you might be interested in, we have a really nice, very active community there. We have a priest that's there regularly answering questions. It's a really nice way if you want to really float some questions and ideas to a priest in a non-judgmental forum. The Discord community is a really good way to do that. So check out our Discord community. Send us an email if you might be interested in that. If you're not on our email list, do that as well. Go to unchartedcatholicman.com. I think that'll take you to the link tree and get on it. Our good buddy Midnight does that for us, does a phenomenal job. So want to encourage you to get on our newsletter list if you're want more regular updates on what's going on and future comings. One of the things I want to, I'm going to tease you a little bit. We've been talking to a priest about doing a virtual retreat. We had talked about an in-person retreat, but we're literally scattered across the world. But we're thinking about doing a virtual retreat, probably by Zoom or something like that. That if anyone is interested in that, let us know. You can leave a comment, send me an email. That would be the easiest thing, unchartedcatholicman@gmail.com, if you might be interested in participating in that. I'm really excited about that. I think there'll be, prayer, obviously, even though we'll all be remote, prayer, reflection. He's going to give some talks. I think there'll be a really good chance for some questions, things like that. So keep that in mind as we kind of work out the details of that. So anyway, rambled on long enough. Appreciate those of you who showed up and enjoy the content, and thanks for all of your contributions to the conversations. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.